Well, my friend, as you know, the matter of electoral reform is an issue with which every government around the world is grappling. This is true in the United States of America, where the last presidential election still suffers from allegations of electoral fraud, foreign interference, voter machines which were fixed to select one candidate's name only, and congressional redistricting in a manner that disenfranchises minorities. Electoral reform is a costly, protracted, and time-consuming exercise. Every Caribbean government has attempted electoral reform. The same is true in the Commonwealth of Dominica. It has been alleged that the Dominica Labour Party government, which is trying to stop electoral reform in Dominica. The allegation seems to be that government fears electoral defeat. Nothing could be further from the truth. We have rebuilt Dominica, including schools, paid public servants, and all our bills, embarked on a massive housing program, improved infrastructure, and initiated our effort to be the world's first climate resilient country. Only last week, National Geographic published an article commending Dominica and indicating we are on track to achieving our goal. I said in my letter to the Dominican electorate, contained in the manifesto, that the Labour Party was asking for their vote based on Labour's performance as a government, the strength of our team, and on the blueprint for our future contained in our 2019 manifesto. While no matter how well you do, it would be impossible to please everyone. The Labour Party has nothing to fear whatsoever in its upcoming elections. Credible pollsters have indicated that the Dominica Labour Party will be re-elected as the government of this country. Let me just pause here to make the point that to date, we are the only party in Dominica to produce a manifesto. The opposition UWP is proposing to present theirs to the country on November 29th, a mere 6 days before the election. That alone is indicative of the lack of seriousness and the disrespect for the public. The UWP has no excuse for this, as the country has been in election mode since about May, when candidates were introduced, and December 2019 is 5 years since the last election. The call by the opposition for electoral reform at this time is a veneer being used by the UWP to confuse the public, create public unrest, incite violence, and provoke a confrontation with the police. Their goal ultimately is to stop elections and to justify external intervention in the national electoral process. The government has not tampered with the electoral laws in any way whatsoever. The current elections are being run and conducted under the same laws and processes that Dominica has had in place ever since independence for 41 years now. The UWP became the government with these laws, and the UWP became the opposition with these laws. The Dominica Labour Party was in opposition for a very long time, over 20 years, with these laws, and we contested the elections and became the government with these laws. Not only that, these same laws were used for the general elections in 2014, at which the Commonwealth Secretariat, CARICOM, and the OS were all observers and declared the process to have been free and fair. In 41 years of independence, the electoral process in Dominica has been free and fair. The electoral process story is a long one. I am going to give you the facts in synopsis, and then I will hear your questions. I suggest that for the full story, the general public should search online and read the very detailed brief which the government has put out. The matter of electoral reform goes back several years, as far back as 2011, with the government when the government proposed to use the Skerrit model of electoral re-registration and reform. The matter was protracted by national debate and opposition resistance. By December 13th, the matter was advanced far enough that an international consultant was hired through the Commonwealth Secretariat. In 2015, the bills or draft legislation, which would have dealt with the issuance of new ID cards and other aspects of reform, were presented to the Parliament after consultation with all stakeholders, including the opposition, UWP. The matter continued, and money was approved by the government for the issuance of new ID cards and a new voting system, and everything that was necessary for the reform. The opposition objected. Further consultations took place. The draft legislation was then to be debated in Parliament on May 23rd, 2017. On that date, while Parliament was in session, shots were fired outside the Parliament as opposition supporters attempted to storm the Parliament. In the interest of transparency, peace, and public safety, I suspended the debate on the matter and sent it back for further consultation with the opposition. After the consultation, changes in relation to issues of bribery and treating were amended in the draft legislation at the opposition's request. The draft bills were amended yet again and submitted to the Parliament. In consequence, in a radio interview on August 31, 2018, the leader of the opposition said the amendments to the bills, and I quote, were good, end quote, and the process could then go ahead. A week later, the opposition, through an attorney and one of the activists, brought an injunction in the courts against the process going forward. As you can see, the opposition has by every single means, lawful and unlawful, sought to frustrate and block the reform process, although they were part of the consultations at every stage. This month, December, is 5 years since the last election. In our system of government, a prime minister can call an election anytime within the 5-year period. I had up till March next year as the latest elections could lawfully take place. I chose to exercise my option to call the elections at this time, since the 5th anniversary of the last election was up, and because, which is the key issue, that there is no way, given the time, the reform process would take under normal circumstances, which these are not, having regard to the opposition's tactics. Election reform could not be completed in less than a year based on the advice and the recommendations of the Electoral Commission. If we waited on electoral reform, that would push the calling of elections past the constitutional date, which would have been unlawful. As soon as elections are over, the Labour Party will again make the matter of electoral reform a matter of priority, and we seek and hope for the cooperation of the opposition. As a matter of fact, we have been in discussions with a couple of our partners who are prepared to finance and to oversee and to coordinate on the country's behalf the electoral reform process. And a letter will go out tomorrow making that formal request, following on our conversations with those countries concerned. So the issue of electoral reform is that this government certainly is not fearful of anything whatsoever.